Everyone thought my brother died in that tornado. But a week later, he came back, standing barefoot on our porch, covered in dirt and smiling like nothing had happened. And I swear to you, whatever returned wearing his face wasn't my brother anymore. The week before the storm hit, the sky over Bowers County started acting strange. We'd see flashes of lightning in broad daylight, hear thunder that seemed to come from beneath the ground instead of above. I remember my mom saying it felt like the sky was holding its breath. Looking back now, I think it was more like something old was waking up under our feet. I was 17 that summer. My little brother, Cody, was 12. We were born 5 years apart but raised like twins. Always in the same room, same schedule, same beat. Cody was the kind of kid who always had dirt under his nails and scraped knees. Always digging holes, chasing frogs, talking about the shapes he saw in the clouds. He had a wild imagination, even for a kid. That Sunday, the sirens went off just before dinner. My dad yelled for us to get to the storm cellar, and we barely made it down before the wind hit. I'll never forget that sound, the roar of it. It was like standing in front of a train that was screaming. The walls shook, the ground buckled, and I held onto Cody so tight I could feel his ribs pressing into mine. And then somehow he slipped from my arms. I don't know how it happened. 1 second he was there. The next the door above us blew open, and the wind reached in like a hand and snatched him away. My dad tried to go after him, but Mom held him back, screaming that it was too late. All we could do was wait it out, buried alive in that cellar with the air thick and stale, praying that somehow Cody would still be alive when it was over. He wasn't. We searched for 3 days. Volunteers, dogs, helicopters, the whole town pitched in. But the storm had torn through everything like a chainsaw. Our barn was gone. Half the woods were flattened. All that was left of Cody was one of his shoes, stuck in the mud next to the broken fence line. We buried an empty casket the following Friday. I didn't sleep for days after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face in the wind. Heard him screaming for me. The guilt sat on my chest like a stone. If I'd held on tighter, if I'd moved faster, he might still be here. I kept replaying it over and over, trying to find a different ending. Then, exactly 7 nights after the tornado, I heard a knock on the front door. It was nearly midnight. My parents were asleep. I was lying on the couch in the living room, trying to get some rest with the TV on low. When I heard the knock, it was soft, almost polite, like the person on the other side wasn't sure if they should even be there. I opened the door, and Cody was standing there, barefoot, covered in dirt, clothes torn, hair matted with mud. But it was him. Same blue eyes, same gap-toothed grin. He looked up at me and said, "Hey, can I come in?" For a second, I thought I was dreaming, or hallucinating. But when I reached out and touched his shoulder, he was solid. Cold, but solid. I yelled for my parents, and we rushed him inside, wrapping him in blankets, crying and hugging him like we'd been given a second chance at life. The hospital checked him out the next morning. No injuries, no dehydration, no signs of malnutrition or trauma. They said it was a miracle, said he must have gotten trapped somewhere and managed to survive. But Cody didn't remember where he'd been. He kept saying it was all a blur, that he just woke up in the woods and found his way home. But things were different after that. At first, I thought it was just the shock. Trauma. The kid had been through hell. But Cody started acting weird in ways I couldn't explain. He wouldn't eat unless the food was completely raw. He stared out the window for hours, not blinking. And at night, I heard him whispering to someone in his room. I tried asking him about it, but he'd just smile and say he was talking to the wind. I told myself it was just his way of coping, that it'd pass. But then things around the house started to change. Small at first. Shadows in the hallway. Static on the TV even when it was turned off. Our dog, Scout, refused to go near Cody's room. He'd growl low in his throat and hide under the couch whenever Cody walked by. And then one morning, I found something in the backyard. There was a circle burned into the grass. Perfectly round, maybe 5 feet wide. In the center of it, there was a pile of teeth. Animal teeth, I think. At least, I hoped they were. Cody was standing on the porch when I found it, just staring at me. And I swear, for a split second, I saw something move in the reflection of his eyes. Something long, twisting, something that didn't belong. After I found the circle and the teeth, I didn't say anything to my parents. What could I say? "Hey Mom, I think Cody's possessed by a wind demon." They were too busy trying to pretend things were normal again. Too relieved to have their little boy back to notice he wasn't actually back at all. But I noticed. Every day, more signs showed up. Cody stopped sleeping. I don't mean he had insomnia. I mean I never saw him close his eyes, not once. He'd lie in bed at night, eyes wide open, breathing slow, staring at the ceiling like he was waiting for something. One time, I stayed up all night just to watch him. Around 3 in the morning, he sat up like he'd heard a noise, tilted his head toward the wall, and smiled. That same wide, gap-toothed grin he had the night he came back. But his eyes weren't focused on anything. It was like he was smiling at something inside his head. The next day, I asked him what he was smiling about. He just shrugged and said, "It talks to me when everything's quiet." That was the first time I felt real fear, not confusion, not concern. Fear. The kind that starts in your stomach and climbs up your spine like ice water. I stopped sleeping after that. One morning, I found mud on the hallway floor again. Just a single footprint. Barefoot. It started in the kitchen and ended right at my bedroom door. That same day, I noticed the photos in the hallway, family pictures, baby pictures, had changed. Cody's face was blurred in all of them, like someone had rubbed it out with dirty fingers. I showed them to Mom. She didn't see anything wrong. I started doing research. Tornado legends, wind spirits, missing children. I went down a rabbit hole on forums about storm-born entities and something called the hollow wind. Most of it read like bad fiction, but some things stuck with me. Especially one story from Oklahoma in the 70s, where 3 kids were taken by a tornado and only one came back, changed. That kid later burned down his entire house with his family inside. The only thing they found intact was a drawing he'd made in red crayon. A spiral with eyes in every loop. That same spiral showed up in the dirt next to our porch the next morning. That night, I heard Cody outside. I was in bed, trying to convince myself that I was just overthinking it all, when I heard the back door creak open. I looked out the window, and there he was, standing in the yard, arms raised toward the trees, whispering. I stepped out quietly, didn't turn the lights on, just watched. He was barefoot again, covered in dirt, and speaking in a language I didn't recognize. The kind of language that sounded older than anything I'd ever heard. Harsh consonants, but soft too, like a song sung through teeth. And then the wind picked up. Not a breeze, not a gust. A sudden violent burst of air that whipped around him in a tight spiral, leaves and dirt swirling, the trees bending inward like something heavy was descending from above. I couldn't move. He didn't notice me. He just kept whispering, louder now. And then he laughed, a dry, hollow laugh that didn't sound like him at all. It sounded like it came from somewhere behind his ribs. The next morning, our neighbor's cat was found dead on our porch. Its neck was broken, and its eyes were missing. When my mom saw it, she gasped, but Cody just looked at it and said, "It shouldn't have been watching." That's when I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to find out what was really going on. I called up Pastor Elliot. He wasn't exactly the fire and brimstone type, but he believed in signs and evil and things that didn't belong in this world. He agreed to come by and check in on the family. No pressure, just a visit. He showed up that evening around dinner time. Cody was sitting on the floor, drawing in one of my old notebooks. When Pastor Elliot walked in, Cody didn't even look up. Just said, "You're wasting your time." Pastor tried to smile and make small talk, but Cody wasn't having it. He stood up, looked the man in the eyes, and said, "You can't pray out the wind." Pastor left 10 minutes later, pale as a ghost. Said something about the air in the house being wrong. He wouldn't come back. I checked the notebook Cody had been drawing in. Page after page of spirals, each one tighter than the last. In the middle of the final page, there was a face. Long, with sharp teeth and eyes like deep holes. Underneath it, he'd written just one word, home. That night, the wind didn't stop. It howled around the house like it was trying to get in, or maybe trying to call something out. The trees shook, windows rattled, and Cody didn't even flinch. He just sat by the window, eyes wide, whispering that same song of teeth. I started to think maybe we hadn't survived the storm at all. That maybe it took us too, and we were just pretending to be alive. Or maybe the thing that came back with Cody was still choosing when to take the rest of us. Because something was waking up in that house, and I wasn't sure I could stop it. By the 3rd week, I stopped calling him Cody in my head. He still looked like my brother, sounded like him, but there was something behind his eyes that didn't belong. Like someone was wearing his skin like a uniform. He walked different, slower and straighter. He smiled too wide. He didn't blink when he should have. And sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, I'd see his mouth move without a sound, like he was reciting something from memory. I started sleeping with my door locked. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up because of a scratching noise. Not loud, just soft enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck rise. It was coming from the hallway. Slow, deliberate, like someone dragging their fingers across the walls as they walked. I held my breath. The sound stopped right outside my door, and then I saw the shadow underneath. Bare feet, standing still. No knocking, no whisper, just standing there. It stayed for at least 5 minutes. I didn't move a muscle. When it finally left, the floor creaked once, then silence. I didn't sleep again that night. When I checked the hallway the next morning, I found 5 long scratches down the length of the wall, about shoulder height, like fingernails digging into the paint. I confronted him that afternoon, asked what he was doing outside my room. He just looked at me and said, "I was never there." Then he smiled and added, "But something else might have been." That was the last time I was alone in the house with him. I begged my parents to take him back to the hospital. Told them he wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating, was acting strange. My mom started crying. My dad told me I needed to let the trauma go. Said we'd been through enough already. But I could tell even they were starting to notice the changes. They just didn't want to admit it. Because if they did, they'd have to accept the same truth I had. Whatever came back from that storm wasn't our boy. That Sunday, my dad found Cody in the attic. He'd nailed all the windows shut and drawn spirals in chalk across the floorboards. Dozens of them. One in the center was big enough for him to sit in. And he was cross-legged, eyes rolled back, whispering to something in the corner. Dad didn't see anything there, but he said it felt like a pressure in the room, a thickness in the air. He told me his ears started ringing the second he crossed the threshold. When he touched Cody's shoulder, the boy screamed so loud it made Dad stumble back. Then Cody opened his eyes, stood up, and calmly walked downstairs like nothing happened. That night, my parents finally agreed something was wrong, but it was already too late. The following day, Scout disappeared. No barking, no whimper, just gone. We found tufts of his fur near the spiral in the backyard. Nothing else. I don't even remember when we last heard him bark. The air in the house started to change too. It smelled old, like wet leaves and something rotting, like mildew and breath. Every corner felt like it was watching, like if you turned too fast, you'd catch something ducking just out of sight. And Cody, he got stronger. I saw him lift the back porch table, solid oak, heavy as hell, with one hand. No effort. He held it like it was a paper plate, then put it down without saying a word. I don't think he realized I saw him. That same night, I finally read the rest of the old story I'd found from Oklahoma. The kid who came back. He vanished again, but not before his older brother wrote a final journal entry. It said, "It learned us. It used the wind to find its way back in. And it needs more now. More than just me." That's when I realized this thing wasn't just hiding. It was learning. It was becoming. 2 days later, I caught Cody watching himself in the mirror. But he wasn't fixing his hair or checking a pimple. He was studying his own face, tilting his head side to side, smiling, stretching his mouth too far, touching the skin like he was trying to remember where it all went. He saw me behind him and whispered, "Almost perfect, huh?" That night, the storm came back. No warnings this time. Just wind and darkness. No rain. Just pressure and howl. I swear I saw faces in the clouds, long and hollow, swirling through the black sky like they were screaming, but no one could hear them. Cody stood out in it, arms raised again. This time, barefoot and shirtless, body covered in cuts I didn't recognize. Not fresh ones. Not wounds. More like carvings. Symbols. I saw something move around him. In the wind. Not a person. Not an animal. Tall. Thin. Moving without sound. It circled him once, then disappeared into the trees. After that, he came back inside and went straight to bed like nothing had happened. And the next morning, my parents were gone. Not a trace. No car in the driveway. No note. No phone. Nothing disturbed. Breakfast still on the counter, plates still warm. Their bedroom looked like they'd just stepped out for a second. When I asked Cody where they were, he said, "They were too loud. The wind doesn't like that." I asked him if he hurt them. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "I didn't. But I told it where they were." Then he winked. After my parents vanished, the house didn't feel like a house anymore. It felt like something else had moved in. The walls creaked in patterns, repeating rhythms like breathing. The lights would flicker only when Cody walked into a room. Doors that were locked at night were wide open in the morning. The air was always cold, even in July. I started feeling like I was being watched from under the floorboards. I tried calling the police. The signal never went through. Tried driving to town. The truck wouldn't start. Battery drained. Then I remembered, Mom's car was gone too. But there were no tire tracks in the driveway. Just windblown dirt, and a second circle burned into the grass, this time with black feathers in the center. I thought about running, just grabbing my backpack and cutting through the woods. But every time I stood on the porch, I'd feel that pressure again, like the air was too thick to breathe. Like something invisible was brushing against my skin, warning me. And Cody would always be watching from a window. He didn't sleep in his room anymore. He stayed in the attic, surrounded by his spirals. The carvings on his body had grown darker, like they'd sunk deeper into his skin. At night, I'd hear him laughing up there, or chanting in that same dead language, long, slow syllables that made the floorboards tremble. But the worst part, he wasn't alone anymore. I started hearing other voices. Low, whispering tones that echoed through the vents. Not just once or twice. Constantly. Like something was having conversations inside the walls. Sometimes they'd call my name. Other times they'd just hum. Not a melody. Not a song. Just a note, held long and hollow, like the sound of the storm that took him in the first place. One night, I gathered the courage to open the attic door. It wasn't locked, but it stuck like the wood didn't want me in. When I finally forced it open, I found Cody standing in the center of the spiral, arms raised, his mouth open, eyes rolled back. And behind him shapes. 7 of them. Tall. Thin. Faces wrapped in what looked like old cloth or spider webs. Their feet didn't touch the ground. They didn't speak. They just swayed, like they were breathing through him, feeding off him. And when they turned toward me, the attic grew darker. Not shadow dark. Absence dark. Like the light itself was being pulled into their forms. I slammed the door shut and ran to my room, heart racing so fast I thought I might pass out. I locked the door, shoved furniture against it, and sat in the corner with my pocket knife open. I didn't sleep. I just listened. Hours passed. Then silence. In the morning, Cody made pancakes. Like nothing had happened. He asked if I wanted some. I said no. He smiled and said, "You'll need your strength soon. It's almost time." Almost time for what? That's what I kept asking myself. Then I found the map. It was tucked under my mattress, like someone or something wanted me to find it. It was hand-drawn, crude, made with charcoal on the back of one of Mom's recipe pages. It showed our house, the spirals in the yard, and a date, August 2nd. 2 days from then. There were other markings. Lines leading from our house into the woods. Circles along the trail. And at the very edge of the paper, in smudged letters, where the storm began. I had no memory of that place, but I knew I had to find it. That night, I waited until Cody was upstairs. I left the house with a flashlight and the knife. The woods were thick, heavier than I remembered. The air buzzed, like it was full of electricity or tiny invisible insects. I followed the map. Every few feet, I'd see a spiral etched into a tree. Some fresh, some old. Half an hour in, I reached the first circle, burned into the ground, smaller than the ones at home. In the center, bones. Not animal. Human. Child-sized. I kept going. The second circle had a doll in the center, charred and melted, its eyes scratched out. By the time I reached the third, I started to hear the wind again. But there was no breeze. It was just sound, swirling through the trees, rising and falling like breathing. I pressed forward, heart pounding. And finally I found it, the place from the map. A clearing. Dead trees surrounded it, all snapped in the same direction. In the middle was the largest spiral I'd seen yet, dug deep into the soil. 10 feet wide, with something buried in the center. Just the top of it visible. A box. Wooden. Old. Covered in carvings. Bound shut with black wire. And sitting on top of it, a photograph. My family. All 4 of us. Except Cody's face had been scratched out. Replaced by a crude drawing of something with no eyes, no mouth. Just a jagged hole where its face should be. And under it, written in red ink, "One of them has to stay." I turned to run. And there he was. Cody. Standing at the edge of the clearing. Smiling. "You weren't supposed to find this," he said, his voice layered with something deeper, like 2 voices speaking through one throat. He took a step forward, and the wind exploded through the trees, knocking me to the ground. I looked up, and the 7 figures were standing behind him again, floating between the trunks, watching. Waiting. "You don't have to be scared," Cody said. It's just balance. One taken, one returned. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. You came here, brother. That means you're ready to switch places. I ran. Didn't answer him. Didn't look back. I just ran. The forest tore at my clothes. Branches slashed across my arms and face. The wind screamed through the trees like it was chasing me. And maybe it was. I don't remember how I made it out. I don't even remember crossing back into the yard. All I know is that 1 second I was surrounded by darkness and spirals and those things. And the next I was inside the house, the front door slamming shut behind me. And Cody was already there, sitting on the stairs, mud on his hands, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. Not angry, not even surprised. Running doesn't change the rules, he said. I locked myself in the bathroom. The power went out that night. Every bulb in the house shattered, popped like they'd been pressurized from the inside. I lit candles and stayed on the floor, clutching my pocket knife and the photograph from the clearing. I stared at it until I memorized every detail. Mom's arm around Dad, me smiling with a crooked tooth, and that empty face where Cody should have been. I didn't cry. I couldn't, because crying would have meant I still believed this was real life. That I still believed I was going to wake up the next morning and things would go back to normal. But they wouldn't. They couldn't, because something had come back with Cody, and now it wanted me. The next morning, I found writing on the bathroom mirror, not written on the glass. Inside it, like the silver backing had been carved from behind. One word, stay. I didn't leave the bathroom for hours. When I finally did, Cody was gone. The attic door was open. I went up slowly. Every step creaked like a warning. The air grew heavier the higher I climbed, like I was walking through water. And when I reached the top, I saw something new. The spirals had changed. They weren't just patterns anymore. They were moving, shifting on their own. The chalk lifted and reformed while I watched. And in the center, where Cody used to sit, was the wooden box from the clearing. It was open now, empty, and burned into the floor beside it was a sentence, one returned. One ode. I don't remember leaving the attic. I don't remember falling asleep. But when I woke up, I was in the living room. The windows were all boarded shut. The TV was on static, though it hadn't worked in days. And there was something playing underneath the static, whispers, chanting, my name, over and over. I unplugged the TV. The chanting continued. I smashed the TV with a hammer. It still didn't stop. I started screaming. At nothing. At everything. I screamed until my throat burned and my knees gave out. And when I finally went quiet, the voice behind me said, good. Now it knows you're ready. I turned. But it wasn't Cody anymore. It was wearing his shape, but it wasn't him. His arms were too long. His neck twisted like a bird's. His eyes, no whites, just storm cloud gray. And that smile was wrong. Too wide. Too pleased. Balance, it said, stepping closer. This world breathes in storms. And it always exhales. I tried to move, but my body felt like it was filled with concrete. It leaned down, put a hand on my chest, and said, you don't have to fight it. You're already hollow enough. Then it disappeared. Not vanished, just folded, like paper collapsing in on itself. And Cody's body dropped to the floor, unconscious. I didn't touch him. Couldn't. He woke up an hour later. Sat up like nothing had happened. Looked at me confused. Why are you crying? He asked. Where's Mom? That was the moment I knew. He didn't remember. Whatever had been wearing him had stepped out. Left him like an empty shell, dropped in the middle of a nightmare. He was back, but hollow, like a book missing its last chapter. He didn't remember the attic, the spirals, the carvings. Nothing. Just black holes in his memory. I tried to explain. I showed him the drawings, the circles, the scratches. He cried. Not like the thing cried. Like Cody. And then he asked the question I was afraid of. Why did it choose me? I didn't have an answer. But I kept seeing the writing from the attic in my head. One returned. One ode. It hadn't taken me yet. Because I hadn't agreed. But it knew I was close. The next night, I dreamed I was in the storm again. Same roar. Same wind. Only this time, I was the one getting pulled upward. Lifted from the ground, spinning through the clouds. And when I looked down, I saw Cody, standing alone in the yard, reaching up, but not to save me. To offer me. I woke up with dirt in my mouth. Dirt under my fingernails. Like I'd been outside. Like I was becoming what it needed me to be. That's why I'm recording this. Because if I disappear, if I vanish like my parents, you'll know why. If someone finds this, if someone's listening, don't come looking. Whatever came back in that storm, it isn't gone. It's patient, and I think the wind is starting to learn my name. I stopped keeping track of days. The house doesn't follow time anymore. The clock stopped 2 nights ago, all at once. Midnight. I watched the second hand freeze like the room had exhaled and forgot to breathe back in. Outside, the wind hasn't stopped since. Not the natural kind. It circles the house. Never touches it. Just spins around it like we're the eye of a storm that never ends. The trees bend and snap, but nothing crosses the porch. Not birds. Not bugs. Not even light. The sky's been gray for days, and the sun doesn't rise anymore. It just brightens the fog for a few hours, then disappears. Cody's getting worse. His memories are unraveling like wet thread. He asks where Mom is at least twice a day. Then he forgets he asked. He doesn't remember his own birthday. He doesn't remember Scout. Last night, he asked me what his last name was. But sometimes he slips. I'll catch him whispering again. Same language. Same tone. Like he's reciting a prayer backward. When I call his name, he blinks and doesn't remember saying anything. But I know. Something's still inside him. Waiting. Watching through his eyes like a spy in a child's body. And the walls, they've started breathing. At first, I thought it was just creaks from the foundation shifting. But I've lived here my whole life. I know the sounds this house makes. This is different. It's rhythmic. Like lungs expanding and contracting just behind the plaster. The wallpaper near the attic door is peeling away, and the wood beneath it is soft, warm, alive. And last night, I heard it whisper back. I was trying to sleep on the couch. Cody was upstairs. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. That awful, weighted silence before something breaks. And then right behind me through the drywall, I heard it. My name. Not in Cody's voice. Not in a human voice. But in something that sounded like wind howling through a throat that had forgotten how to form words. Long, stretched syllables that cracked on the edges. I froze. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. And it said it again. You are the last breath. I couldn't take it anymore. This morning I packed a bag. Notebook. Knife. Flashlight. Matches. Cody begged me not to go. Said the wind would follow me. Said it was inside my lungs now too. Maybe he's right. But I don't care. I followed the trail from the old map again. The spirals were still there, but they'd spread. Dozens more now. Some carved into trees, others burned into rocks. There were bones everywhere. Birds. Raccoons. Something bigger too, maybe deer. Skulls stripped clean, placed neatly in a circle around one spiral that looked freshly dug. And in the center, a mirror. Shattered. Each shard pointed outward. When I looked into one, I didn't see myself. I saw the attic. I saw the box again. Only this time, it was closed. And something inside it was scratching. I dropped the shard. Ran back to the house. But the house was gone. Not destroyed. Not abandoned. Just gone. The porch, the steps, the roof. It was still there physically. But it wasn't the house I grew up in. It had shifted. Warped. Windows taller. Wood darker. The air around it smelled like rot and rain. The lawn had no grass. Just dirt, dry and cracked like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. The spirals had moved to the walls, etched into the siding, glowing faintly. And Cody? He was waiting by the door, smiling again. Did you find it? He asked, like he already knew the answer. I didn't reply. I walked past him, straight to the attic. The spirals were pulsing now, moving like blood under skin. And in the middle, the box had returned. Closed. Wired shut again. But this time, there was something else next to it. A second box. Smaller. Open. And inside, my name carved into the wood. Just my name. Nothing else. That was the moment I understood. It wasn't about Cody anymore. It never was. It was about me. I wasn't spared that night in the tornado. I was marked. Cody was just the first step. The doorway. But I was always the destination. The wind didn't bring him back wrong. It brought him back as a vessel. So it could watch me. Learn me. Wear me. And when I opened my mouth to scream, the air tasted like dirt and teeth. I don't know if anyone's going to hear this. Maybe you found this recording. Maybe it showed up on your phone. Maybe it played on the radio late one night between stations. If you're hearing this, I need you to understand something. There's something in the wind. It moves in spirals. It speaks in silence. It wears our skin. And it's patient. It waits in attics. It whispers through walls. It watches from the corners of your reflection. When the next storm comes, don't open the door. Because if it took something from you, it's only a matter of time before it comes back to finish the trade. That was today's story. If you made it this far, let me know what you thought in the comments. Also, tell me if you've ever heard of anything similar happening near where you live. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are plenty more chilling stories coming your way. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.